हेलो फ्रेंड्स। तो इंडिया आफ्टर इंडिपेंडेंस की सीरीज में हम चलते हैं आगे। आउटकम्स ऑफ लिंग्विस्टिक रीऑर्गेनाइजेशन। द path to politics and power was now open to people other than the small English speaking elite. Linguistic reorganization also gave some uniform basis to the drawing of state boundaries. It did not lead to disintegration of the country as many had feared earlier. On the contrary, it strengthened national unity. Above all, the linguistic states underlined the acceptance of the principle of diversity. Gandhi on linguistic basis. If linguistic provinces are formed, it will also give a fillip to the regional languages. However, certain issues still remain unresolved. Issue of minority language still remains. Even in states which are created on linguistic lines, there are minorities in those states which speak different language and they don't speak the official language of the state. There is around 18% people which falls in this category and separate states cannot be created for such small communities. To allay their apprehensions of development, Constitution has also made certain provisions in form of Article 30 to establish and administrate a educational institution. A constitutional amendment was also made after 1956 reorganization that states should make adequate provisions for the education of such minorities in their mother tongue. It also provides for appointment of a commissioner for linguistic minorities to investigate and review the safeguards provided for such minorities. However, despite such measures, ground reality is different and more so in case of tribal minority languages. Urdu, which is one of the biggest minority languages, has not been accorded status of official language in even single state except Jammu and Kashmir. It also suffered because it was wrongfully associated with the communal questions. In lack of official support, the language declined considerably but still maintains a strong presence through newspapers, cinema, and cultural activities. Tribal integration and national consolidation. Tribals in India are a very heterogeneous community. There are more than 400 tribal communities as per 1971 census. Some like Negis and Meenas well assimilated in mainstream, other like tribes of northeastern states still retaining original cultural identities. During British period, they were grossly isolated at times and were exploited on the other by merchants, administrators, forest officials, moneylenders, and so on. They primarily depended on forests which were alienated from them. Their unique culture also came under threat from outsiders like missionaries. In most cases, they were alienated from their land as well. Their anger was also vented out in form of many uprisings during colonial period. Colonial rule left them in gross suspicion and insecure, and their integration into Indian nation became a challenge as India had already witnessed the ill effects of policies of isolation and assimilation in past. So Nehru and other leaders saw a middle path in form of integrative approach and said tribal areas have to progress in their own way. Tribals had to be developed economically, socially, and politically, but as per their own genius. Their forest and land rights have to be acknowledged. Their language and culture has to be preserved. Provisions were also made in the constitution itself. Article 46 called for their educational and economic development without injustice and exploitation. Similarly, special provisions were made for tribal areas and governors were given additional responsibility. State and central laws have to be modified to be applicable in these areas. Right to property and right to free travel and residence were curtailed in these areas. Seats were reserved in legislature for them. National Commission for Scheduled Tribes was also set up. Tribal advisory councils were set up in areas with tribal population. However, execution of above ideas remained far from satisfaction and tribals lag behind in the developmental race and tribal areas are still exploited by the moneylenders. Forest officials, merchants and traders, forest contractors and land grabbers. Their ignorance of law has also made them even more vulnerable. Their educational performance have remained very low and little attention has been paid on education in their own language. despite constitutional directives. As a result of this, there have been many protest movements, violent actions, and vociferous demands for their development in post-independence period. Antagonism of tribals towards non-tribals is another grave development. In many areas, tribals have been outnumbered by the outsiders and it has further fueled their anger. Manipur was a monarchy at the time of independence. However, it signed instruments of accession on the conditions that its autonomy will be maintained. But people wanted self rule, and as a result, Maharaja of Manipur ordered elections of assembly in 1948. These were the first elections in India after independence and Congress came to power. After elections, the state became a constitutional monarchy. In the Legislative Assembly of Manipur, there were sharp differences over the questions of merger of Manipur with India. While the state Congress wanted the merger, other political parties were opposed to this. The government of India succeeded in pressuring the Maharaja into signing a merger agreement in September 1949 without consulting the popularly elected Legislative Assembly of Manipur. These caused a lot of anger and resentment in Manipur, the repercussions of which are still being felt. Thank you.